זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני, זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו. זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני, זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו. Today is a glorious day. Today is a day you have made. So come, let us sing and rejoice. So come, every soul, every voice. זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני. זה היום, זה היום, עשה אדוני, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו, נגילה ונשמחה בו.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is wonderful to see all of you here in the sanctuary. I'll just apologize ahead of time for how cold it is. We're not sure what has happened. It's so lovely and warm outside and yet cold in here. And we welcome everybody with us, especially I want to welcome those from First United Methodist Church in Rolla. Thank you for joining us tonight. And to all who are joining us from home or wherever you are, if you're joining us online. And we are going to welcome in Shabbat by lighting our candles and saying Kiddush. So if you are at home, this is an opportunity to grab your candles, grab a glass of wine, and we'll join together in welcoming in Shabbat. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. As we welcome in the light and the warmth and the peace of Shabbat, we join together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And if you have your prayer books, and by the way, your prayer books open from right to left, the Hebrew side. So those of us who are new to our congregation, it's not opening in English, it is opening in Hebrew, right to left. And on page 123, we prepare for the Kidoshim. We stand for this prayer. We raise ourselves to a higher plane of holiness by standing. The wine represents the ink on which we inscribe our souls on a blank page for this Shabbat. And we sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, ושבת קודשו באהבה ורצון הנחיר לנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחירו לקרוא קודש זכר לציון מצרים קיוונו וחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. And we say together, L'chaim, to life.
You may be seated. So I feel like before I give these words or offering these words, I need to give a disclaimer. I had planned to tell a story tonight and then took a walk around 2 o'clock. Lee came to get me out of my office. I was cold and said, go outside. So we walked around and he said, are you coming home in between? I said, no, I have too much work to do. And he said, well, what are you talking about tonight? I said, I'm telling a story. Well, why aren't you going to talk about the Torah portion? I'm going to find a story. I have a story that relates to it. Well, what's the Torah portion about? So we started talking about the Torah portion. Let me also preface by saying it is not often that we take walks and talk Torah. Like, that's not a normal thing. It just so happened. So we were talking Torah on our walk around the building, and he said, oh, this is what I think about with it right now. This is what's coming to mind. And I looked at him and said, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't have enough time to think about that. Oh, yeah, you do. I didn't go back to my desk to work on it. I had my story ready. And yet an hour and a half ago, he was in the back of my head, and I sat down and I said, he challenged me to this. So this is what came out of my brain. It makes sense to me, but that's why I'm giving you this disclaimer. It works, but I don't know if it works. So in our Torah portion, it opens up with the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. They are 2 of Aaron's sons. And actually, we understand a few Torah portions ago that they died because they offered a strange fire, and immediately we're told the fire reaches out and consumes them and they die. What we don't really know is what is the purpose for their death? Did they make a mistake? It isn't entirely clear. The rabbis do discuss whether they did something wrong with the rite, and whether they offered a strange fire, as is discussed in Parashat Shmini. Now we come to the opening of Parashat Akhremot, which is after the death, and it's after the death of Aaron's 2 sons. It introduces us that they have died and tells us that they died from coming too close to God. And then all of a sudden the Torah transitions, and now we receive a bevy of laws, how to do things. There are 3 sections in the rest of this Torah portion. One on the eating of meat. Feel free to look at it. It talks about really how we as Jews are not supposed to eat our steak rare, in case you were wondering. Talks about a section, one regarding improper sexual relationships, and one large section on atonement, specifically Yom Kippur. This section goes over the scapegoat ritual. It is put into detail, and if you haven't or don't remember this section, this is where the priests bring out 2 goats, and everybody places their hands on these 2 lucky goats, and they put all of their sins on the goats, and the goats become the scapegoat of the sins, and they are sent out into the wilderness, dispatched, taking everybody's sins with them. We don't do that ritual anymore. Just making sure that our visitors know we do not have scapegoats anymore. It might be fun, but we do not do that. But the idea is the same. God offers us the opportunity to repent. God offers us the opportunity to not be held hostage forever by something that we did. And we're given the opportunity to atone for it, to grow from it, to change. And Yom Kippur allows us the opportunity to recognize that we can change and become better people. The question I ask over and over with regard to that Yom Kippur ritual in this parasha is, why not Nadav and Avihu? What happened that they could not atone for what they did? What was so wrong that they were given the ultimate cancellation, that of death? Yes, I said the word cancellation, as this parasha brings up thoughts of cancel culture, which has been prevalent in our society really for the last 3 to 5 years. It began as what folks call-out culture with the Me Too movement, which encouraged people, women especially, to call out their abusers on forums where the accusations would be heard. And really what this meant were public forums, especially with regard to ensuring that people heard what powerful abusers did. What grew from that is cancel culture, recognizing that there is a societal consequence for offensive speech and behavior. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, have no fear, there are many people who don't know what I'm talking about. As a recent public poll suggested, that while 22% of those polled have heard a whole lot about cancel culture, 32% said they heard nothing at all and couldn't tell you what cancel culture is. And then if we look at it according to age, 43% of Americans age 18 to 29 have heard quite a bit about it, compared to only 12% of Americans over the age of 65 who say that they've heard a great deal about it. So no worries if you haven't heard about it. I'll attempt to explain it a little bit more. I will say that this year I've gotten into a few frustrating discussions with our 9th and 10th grade religious school class over cancel culture. More often than not, I'm told that I don't really understand cancel culture, which I really think is their way of telling me that I'm old. However, the way I understand cancel culture, beyond the initial idea of call-out culture and calling out those who are abusers, is that many are now using cancel culture to call out and pass judgment against those that they view as a public offender of any sort. That could be simply, your ideas don't match with my ideas, and I'm calling you out and I'm telling people to cancel you. Canceling can be anything from shunning someone to getting them fired from their job to boycotting them or their business. The question is, what does cancel culture really achieve? We can call out bad behavior and bad comments, and yes, we can punish those who deserve punishing, but too often cancel culture, I think, goes well beyond that. Now, if you say something or share an opinion that people don't agree with, especially on social media, you can quickly be called out and even shamed for your opinion. It has gotten so bad that former President Barack Obama has warned against it, suggesting that cancel culture is little more than a feel-good measure to boost the egos of those engaged in self-righteous condemnation. He went on to say, "The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws." He concluded his comments by suggesting that shutting down opposing views and being overly critical and judgmental is not a mark of true activism. When I think back to this week's Parashat with Nadav and Avihu and the rules for Yom Kippur, I wonder if this isn't a way that our tradition is trying to right the wrongs that was the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. Perhaps putting the rules here for Yom Kippur for communal and personal atonement, following the recognition that they died after coming before God, is a way to remedy the fear, a negative fear of God that the community likely had after the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. Even if they offered strange fire, did something wrong with the ritual, were drunk and not fully present, all of these options are discussed by the rabbis in the Midrash. They were never given the opportunity for teshuvah, to atone for the wrong that they did. Perhaps, I'm going out on a limb to say this, perhaps God realized that God acted in haste, and there needed to be a way to repent and repair broken relationships caused by wrong actions. This doesn't mean that there aren't consequences, but rather with atonement, one always has the opportunity to return to the path of good after a period of personal introspection and work. I read in a Newsweek article where someone suggested that Yom Kippur is the antidote to cancel culture. Think about it. The biblical ritual of the scapegoat, of laying our sins onto a goat, as well as the al-chaitz we call out in synagogue today, they are all done as a collective. We don't point fingers at one another and call each other out for what we've done. Rather, we stand together, we hold each other up, and we understand that each of us is more than the worst things we've ever done, because the gates of teshuvah are always open. God is always welcoming us back as long as we're willing to grow and change. I don't have an answer for the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. And yes, the text is pretty clear that God had something to do with it. But perhaps if God can change and be open to our teshuvah, we should be able to do the same instead of canceling. We should be willing to extend the same grace toward those seeking redemption or forgiveness, and work on creating a culture of positive reinforcement that gives meaning to our failures, just as we're given at Yom Kippur, which allows our mistakes to become part of our past instead of defining who we are. Next week's Parashat is Kidoshim, and it continues with doubling down on rules after the deaths of Nadav and Avihu, which I guess means that God wants to make sure we get it right. In the midst of Kidoshim, which is the center point of Torah, we are taught, love your neighbor as yourself. This is what we need to do. Not cancel people, but love them, or at least allow space for them. As we come to the end of Passover, let's truly leave behind Mitzrayim, those small, narrow places that too often we find ourselves in because we build walls to contain our own rightness, our own righteousness, and our own judgment, which leaves other people out. If God can accept change, so can we. Amen. And we turn now in our prayer books as we continue to welcome in Shabbat. We turn to page 138 for Lecha Dodi, and when we get to the third verse, which is actually the final verse, but the third one we'll sing. At the bottom of page 139, we will rise. We will turn toward our back doors to solemnly welcome, not yet, solemnly welcome in the Shabbat bride. I will tell you when it's time.
Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela shamor v'zachor v'divor Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'litila lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha ki mekor haverava merosh mikedem lechzucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela boi v'shalom aderet ba'ala gam b'simcha u'b'tzola doch emunei am segula boi chala
Face the ark.
Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekava nekavela.
And we remain standing and turn to page 146 for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
And we turn to page 148 and we join together in Ma'ariv Aravim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtsono, bore yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Page 151, at the middle of the page, we read together. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. And together on page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated, and we turn to the top of page 155, and we'll join together in the English. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. And we turn to page 157, and we read together at the top of the page. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Page 158.
Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh, Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh, no rak tehilo. Osei fele, Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh, Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh, no ra tehilo. Osei fele malechutecha ba'uvanecha, okei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze'eli banu ve'amru Adonai dimo le'olam va'ed. Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh, Mikamoka ba'erim Adonai, Mikamoka nedar v'kodesh. Osefele v'ne'ema tifata Adonai et Yaakov Uki'alo miyad chazak v'himenu Baruch atah Adonai Ba'al Yisrael Migamocha ba'edim ba'Adonai Migamocha nedar ba'kodesh Migamocha ba'edim ba'Adonai Migamocha nedar ba'kodesh.
And we turn in our prayer books to page 160, where we'll join together in singing with Cantor Iker Hashki Venu, an evening prayer for peace that asks God to spread God's shelter of peace over us as night begins to fall.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomerenu Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomerenu Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us with wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomerenu L'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomerenu
And we turn to page 163, the middle of the page.
Thought has blown the marketplace away. There's a song on the wind and the joy in the trees. Shabbat has arrived in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night, and eternity utters a day. And eternity utters a day. Adonai, Svartai, Svartai Titach, Ufi, Yaki Tequila Deva. Adonai, Svartai, שפתי תפתח, ופי יקי תהילתך. A thought has blown the marketplace away. There's a song on the wind and a joy in the trees. Shabbat has arrived in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night, and eternity utters a day. And eternity utters a day. Adonai, Svatai, Svatai Tita, Ufi, Yaki Tequila, Teha. Adonai, Svatai, Svatai Tita, Ufi, Yaki Tequila, Teha. Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor ve'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chaste Avot Veimahot, Umevi Geula Livnei Vneihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer, Umoshia Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'ezrat Sarah. Page 168. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol ata rav lehoshia, Morid hatal, Mechalkel chayim v'chesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofech horim, O matir asurim, umekayem emunato rishenei afar. Micha mocha ba'al gevurot, o mido meroch, melech bemit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch ata Adonai, mechaye hakol. Page 170. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalaluhu chasela. Baruch ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. And apologies that we did not warn you ahead of time. This is our first Shabbat. You mean on Saturday you did? Okay, well. Thank you. So this is our first Friday evening, where for those who are used to the Gevurot, we switched to Morid Hatah, which means we switched to the summertime. I recognize it is not summer yet, but we begin to pray for dew. This morning, as we were going through the prayer in our morning service, I kept thinking this is one of those moments that, at least in terms of our prayer, shows how focused we are in our tradition when it comes to Israel. Because the rainy season is ending in Israel at this time, it'll rain a little bit, but it's ending, and they're moving to obviously the hope of dew in the mornings. Does not match up at all with St. Louis, because April is the rainy season in St. Louis. But we are not praying for rain, we're praying for dew, even though we recognize the blessings every day of rain, even when we don't enjoy it. It is a blessing as it brings life. Page 179, we'll join together in a prayer for peace. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael, bashalom. And we turn in our prayer books to page 376 and page 377, in which we'll offer a prayer for our country. I know in the words we just said in our prayer for peace, it is sort of alluded to our country, but we can never have too many prayers for our country. And then we'll also offer a blessing for the state of Israel, because certainly at this time, more than ever, Israel and her people, all her people, need our blessings. And we join together on page 376. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. And together at the bottom of the next page, O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. And we turn back in our prayer books to page 371 as we turn our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers to those who are in need of healing. We think of our friends and our loved ones, and tonight, if you are comfortable, we'll rise and all together share those names of those in need of healing, sending them toward the heavens, and we invite those who are at home to do the same. So if you have a name to call aloud, I ask you to rise at this time, and together we'll call those names aloud. And we take all of those names into our hearts as we ask God to swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit as we join together in singing our prayer for healing, Mishaberach.
Mishaberach Avoteinu Ekor Aberacha Behimotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us sing Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Ekor Haberacha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah, strength
moment for silent and personal prayer.
יהיו לרצון אמרפי והיום ליבי לפניך יהיו לרצון אמרפי והיום ליבי לפניך Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, Ego Ali, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, Ego Ali, והיום ליבי לפניך יהיו לרצון אמרפי והיום ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי יהיו לרצון אמרפי והגיון ליבי לפניך.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is David Spiewak, and I have the privilege of representing the Board of Trustees this evening. Tomorrow at UH, Torah study begins at 9 a.m. in the chapel or via Zoom. The Shabbat morning service and the Bar Mitzvah of Cole Barton will be at 10:30 tomorrow via live stream. Good luck tomorrow, Cole. Musar class with Rabbi Rosenberg will be at 12:30 in the chapel or via Zoom. Pirkei Avot with Cantor Eicher at 3:30 tomorrow in person or via Zoom. At 6 p.m., we usher out Shabbat with Next Week Now via live stream. On Monday, April 25th, we have the Red Cross blood drive will be held from 11 to 3 in the Spielberg Chapel. For additional information on other upcoming events and programs, please visit our UH website. Thank you to our terrific tech team for making it possible for all of us to be together virtually this evening. And the gift shop is open on Sundays when religious school is in session from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and by appointment. Have a great evening.
And we are in the period of the Omer, which began last Saturday evening, the second night of Passover. And we are now counting down 49 days, 7 weeks from Passover to Shavuot, or for our guests, it's often also referred to as Pentecost. And so we're counting down that period. We count from slavery and freedom all the way to the moment of Shavuot, when we receive the commandments at Mount Sinai. And so each Shabbat evening for the next 7 weeks, as we make our way toward June 4th, I believe it is, we will be counting the Omer. You can also count each night in your home. We do it at sunset. There are all sorts of online Omer counters. There are even apps that will remind you and help you count the Omer as well. We turn to page 570 and we rise. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. And we join together in the blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who hallows us with mitzvot, who gives us and commands us to count the Omer. Hayom Shiva Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad LaOmer. Today is 7 days, which is 1 week of the Omer. And we turn now in our prayer books to page 586, and we remain standing for Aleinu.
Aleinu shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת קדום ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמרנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגוררנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים. רבדי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 591. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be. (595). There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways that we remember. This Shabbat, the heartfelt condolences of our congregation go out to the family of Rosalia Colton. We are in the period of Shloshim for Anne Ruth Abrams, Ellen Sue Alton, Israel Broom, Constant Cookie Kraus, Vladimir Levin, Samuela Sammy Sanders, and Barry Sternick. This week, this Shabbat, we observe the yahrzeits and we lovingly remember Pearl Amernick, Rebecca Bloom Astrin, Gertrude Plout Balk, Jesse K. Barnholtz, David Barter, Florence Beldner, Ralph Bierman, Estelle Birnbaum, Max Birnbaum, Eva Corey Bornstein, Sidney J. Bronfin, Nathan A. Buffin, David Cherrick, Louis Cohen, Dave Lewis Kornfeld, Harry Dooney, E. Ted Fadum, Stan Fagan, Aaron A. Feigenbaum, Stanley E. Feldman, Barbara A. Feldman, Annie M. Fischlewitz, Edward J. Gallant, Jax Gleitman, Joseph G. Goldberg, Leslie Gottlieb, Boots Hartstein, Jacqueline Bliss Holt, Bert Holtzman, Albert H. Kaplansky, Lillian Kaplansky, Nathan Keener, Morris Kirschman, Joseph W. Kopman, Adam R. Kornblatt, Aaron Sonny Cram, Morris Kransberg, Howard Frank Lockman, Marcia Halpern Lerner, Sidney David Light, Jenny Lux, William Malpe, Isidore Marchbein, Muriel K. Mayer, Sarah Moss, Leo Joseph Novison, Lena Frank Oakley, Millard Pearlstone, Joyce Hope Portnoy, Etta Oglander Reichman, Jack Rodenberg, Ben Roman Jr., Hilda K. Schiffer, Dorothy Schnerman, Henry H. Schwartz, Aaron Cecil, Lizzie Cecil, Francis Kovich Schenker, Philip Sherman, Burton Shostak, Yetta Slumsky, Jack L. Smith, Rose H. Gans Solar, Shirley Berger Starr, Alfred Stoller, Fred H. Suffian, Oren Dan Sussman, B. Dobrin Tulper, Bessie Euchman, Clara Zide, Irvin J. Zide, Anna Zucker. Zichronam Livracha, may each of their memories be for blessing as we turn to page 598 and we rise for the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Bialma Divra Chirute Viamlich Malchute, B'chayechon Uvyomechon, Uv'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Molmei Almaya, Yit Barach Ve'yish Tabach Ve'yit Pa'ar Ve'yit Romam Ve'yit Naseh, Ve'yit Hadar Ve'yit Ale Ve'yit Halal Shemei Dekudashar Barichu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tush B'chata V'nechamata, Damiram Be'alma Ve'imru Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. And as we welcome in Shabbat with the sun setting, so too do we usher out Passover. And I hope that for all of you who celebrated, that it has been a wonderful Passover. And so as we usher out Passover, I offer this blessing. May you remember the miraculous in your own life. May you understand that you can pass through narrow and difficult places inside you, that Egypt in Hebrew means through a tight and dangerous place. And may you always walk purposefully through life as we did at the parting of the sea. For movement without direction will create just a hole in the ground. And may you remember freedom is a state of mind, not a place. And may you celebrate holy days, festivals, Shabbat, and every day until you are all joy. Amen. And we close with a prayer of peace.
Ose Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Ose shalom במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Shabbat Shalom. We invite our visiting group to come forward to the front row.